A child crawls towards a puppy, inexorably drawn, and the puppy responds. We go to the forest for solace, sensing the peace that resonates from a harmonious community of life forms, and we receive it. Life recognizes life in all its many forms. Life exalts in life. Connecting with life, any life form creates a glow. In that connection, energy flows and we're healed. This is our natural inheritance, what we instinctively know, what helps us thrive. This is what we have been torn from as we live in an increasingly soulless, frantic, man-made world. This is what we can and must return to. It's quite simple, really, if we come from that place as our guidance. Not easy, but simple. It is possible. It is essential. It is joyous. Good morning, everybody. Whoever's there, we'd love you to share your name and location and what attracted you to being here. I'm Susan Eirich. The picture you see is of Earthfire, the wolf. The Institute is named after her. And this is my backyard near Grand Teton National Park. Earthfire Institute is a wildlife sanctuary and retreat center based in the Grand Tetons and along the whole Yellowstone to Yukon Wildlife Corridor in the Rocky Mountains of the United States. And you can find out more about us on our website. So we're talking today about rest and reconnection ecology and kinship. The seventh day of rest theme is kinship. And the original idea of this program came from Shelley doing a meditation and the earth saying if she really wanted 7 days of rest. So how do we rest? And what is the connection of that to what we call reconnection ecology, a joyous path towards healing ourselves and our earth? They start off with an interesting question of what if our earth is lonely for us? Not just that we are lonely for it, but we're lonely for each other as a basis of the sense of kinship. How do we proceed in all this? How do we make these reconnections? So we can solve our ecological and spiritual crises if we expand our human consciousness to connect with all life, with this multitude of intelligences and expressions of spirit. Reconnection ecology offers a path to come back to our true place within an expanded community of all life. And innately in that connection, we can rest and heal. Next. So reconnection ecology is a practice of awakening to a deep bond with nature to spur both individual and collective change. The difference with reconnection ecology and many other very important ways of being in nature is the depth of it. The depth of the connection helps us truly transform almost on a cellular level so that we feel a part of what we really are a part of, all life. Next. There are 3 phases of reconnection ecology: to reconnect first, then to trust that connection, and then to act on it. So through connecting deeply with and falling in love with other life forms, we can solve our ecological and spiritual crises, because that connection opens a channel to which flows information, strength, and healing, leading to creative, practical solutions. And there again, we have a sense of kinship and rest. Can we go on to the next slide? I can't see this really well. This This is a picture of from my octopus teacher. For many of you have probably seen it. And the profound connection that happened between this gentleman, Craig Foster, and an octopus. And how did that happen? And what did it mean? And how did that kinship lead to profound change in the person? We don't know what the changes in the octopus herself was, except that she kept coming to him. Excuse me, someone just joined and I'm going to admit her. And then in terms of reconnection ecology, there's a reconnect. In this case, she invited him to connect. And then there was a trust that was between man and octopus. And the profundity of that made Craig act. And there are now an incredibly different awareness of the importance of kelp forests around the world from one connection. Can we have the next one? So I'm going to tell some stories that talk about connection and kinship and what that means. So as I mentioned, we're a rehabilitation and retreat center, and we had two bears, Major Bear and Huckleberry Bear. Can I have the next slide? And Huckleberry Bear lived in an enclosure alone after his brother passed away. For a couple of years, his brother had passed away, and someone came to visit and spent some time in front of him, and suddenly began to feel really sad. And she said, "This is really strange. Why am I feeling sad?" And then she found tears rolling down her face, and she said, "This is really weird." And then she heard not exactly the words, but an image of, "I miss my brother." But she didn't know that he had a brother. Can we have the next slide? Another form of kinship. This is a wolf close to the end of death, close to death, the end of her life. And we brought her to this video is online if anyone's interested, and it's called Energy Healing Wolf. And can I see the next slide? So Apricot, this is after the healing when you see her on the left and she's being healed on the right. We brought her to our yurt. She had been gravely ill with distemper and was basically semi-paralyzed and epileptic. And I couldn't stand it. So I invited this woman on the right, Jill, to do energy healing. She does craniosacral work on Apricot. And the video shows, here you just see a shot of it, but the video shows her settling in to receiving the energy healing, the reciprocity, the giving of human healing wolf receiving. At the end of this video, you see her completely healed and just resting. And the rest comes from the idea of Jill receiving energy, passing it through her, Apricot receiving it, healing, and then the joy that brings all of us. So with a sense of kinship, again, all the animals we have here are wild, rescued wild animals. How incredibly receptive wild animals are. What we're missing by not knowing that sense of kinship that's available and possible for us. Next slide, please. Another sign of a wolf who had wanted nothing to do with people. You see how nervous he is. His name is Uinta on the upper left, and wary in the bottom. And Jill he also had a medical condition, and Jill is giving him craniosacral, and he's fighting it, and he's fighting it. But you can see he's upright, falling asleep upright, unable to resist. And once again, there's this beautiful reciprocity and kinship between, I would say it's a specific human and a specific wolf, but it's also an archetypal caring of one species for another. I could see the next slide. This is a wolf called Cucumber, who had 2 near-death experiences and had wanted nothing to do with humans. And after the 2 near-death experiences, when it was clear to her that we were trying to help her and she survived, she changed completely. she suddenly had a sense that maybe it was possible to have a sense of kinship with humans. And after this operation, when she healed, this is what she looks like. She actually, this is a retreat we did in the yurt. And she went and, so our yurt is about 30 feet and we have retreats of 12 to 14 people in it. And she went into the yurt where she'd never been before and went to greet every single human being there. You see the connection. She'd never met this person on the left, whose name is Maya. She's a Lakota pipe carrier. So what's happening with that capacity for kinship? Next. We had a cougar called Windwalker, who in his old age became paralyzed. And here you see him accepting being put in a wheelchair by strangers. How come? How does that happen? What are they feeling? What kinship is possible? Can we go on to the next one? I just love this picture. This is Windwalker, very close to the end of his days, with my partner, Jean. And you can see the beauty of what's going on between those two beings. If I could have the next one. And this is my partner, Jean. I think it's really important to understand that it's not just wild animals that we can do this with, or that I'm doing this with, because people say, yeah, it's fine, wild animals. But I'm saying we do this with everybody. This was a rooster called Banty. We found one morning with his neck twisted, looking up to the sky, obviously unable to eat. And John took him and began to help him heal, would hold his head so he could eat, and slowly begin to help him over several weeks, begin to turn his head up, and his capacity returned. Could I see the next slide? Actually, go back 1 second to the previous slide. So Banty, yeah, recovered completely. The healing energy that goes between two beings is just a really profound thing. So that's an introduction that I wanted to give you all. So life itself is an absolute celebration. It's a joy. It's a gift to be embodied. It's joy is inherent in life. How do we access healing? Through how do we access healing really is ultimately through the sense of rest and quiet and tuning. Earlier I had said, what if our earth is lonely for us? We can't know that unless we quiet down and tune and develop a sense of kinship with our earth who birthed us, in effect. How do we receive? We can't receive unless we're quiet. And the whole idea of our earth asking for 7 days of rest, there's such a frantic energy all over her now because of the billions of us, restless, afraid, fighting, increased technology, increased this trust. I understand why she'd be asking for 7 days of rest. And innately within that connection between us and the earth, or between any kind of connection, and all of us can feel this with people we love or animals we love, in that connection of kinship and reciprocity of giving and taking, in that give and flow lies rest and renewal and a beginning sense of absolute joy. We need to make a radical shift in how we're living and what our values are and what we need and how we're tuning to things. And the beginning of that radical shift is to rest and tune and listen to a wisdom greater than ours in which we are embedded. Native Americans talk about walking at the pace of the earth, deliberately walking slowly at the pace of the earth, not rushing across our surface to go to get a job or a cup of coffee or whatever, walking at the pace of the earth. We need this kind of radical shift. And that quote actually came from a wonderful book called We Are the Middle of Forever, which is a series of 20 interviews with Native Americans on the situation currently of climate crisis, and from an indigenous perspective of how we got here and how to get out of it. And the basic focus overall in the book is the solution lies in reciprocity and relationship. And again, in there, we can rest and recover. And connecting deeply with nature gives a sense of coherence as opposed to incoherent, which is what much of our life is like now. We can go back to picture of me if you want, Sierra. It gives us a sense of integration as opposed to disintegration. Gives us a sense of grounding. It helps us operate from where life is, not our own ideas of it. If we're cut off from our own roots, which is our earth, we're floundering. We can't rest, we can't relax, and we're discombobulated. So I would like to stop at this point. See if there's anyone who'd like to make any comments. How do these stories illuminate the themes of the 7 days of rest, of presence, resonance, gratitude, truth, clarity, and kinship? And how can we integrate the Earth's call for 7 days of rest in our lives? If there's anyone who'd like to make a comment, otherwise we can go on to the end of the presentation.
I guess I'd love to pose a question about how do we integrate restfulness rather than this restlessness that's sort of, you talk about this 360 degree or 180 degree shift. And it feels like certain things can't shift. So how do we bring some of this restfulness into the restless kind of world that we're living in?
What do you mean it feels like some things can't shift?
Well, I guess it feels like, the economy, for instance, is a bigger force than we can just kind of tweak. Like it feels like the idea of the nation state and sort of the way that we've fragmented the world. And then here comes the internet and social media. It's just,
yeah,
like you said, we live in this man-made world.
Yeah.
And I think there are certain things, especially within us, that can shift. But what about, how do we bring some of this into our lives, despite the fact that certain things continue to be quite restless?
There are a couple of things. To begin with, there is this frantic restlessness, but life itself, our earth itself, and something mysterious that much larger than us, is much larger than us or the corporations or any of the stuff we're doing. If we tune to that larger source, it's actually stronger.
Right, like the biosphere as a whole.
Yeah, stronger than this man-made stuff that we think is so potent, which it is in a destructive way, but it also could disappear very quickly.
Right.
While the other's going to stay, is more eternal.
Right.
So tuning into something that is eternal, first of all, calms us because it gives us a perspective. It's getting lost into all this stuff that's so invasive. So it helps us that way. It gives us perspective. And as we do this with other human beings, we support one another in this and we create a groundswell. I have no idea if that groundswell will be strong enough or fast enough, but I do think I know that is a powerful counterforce. We don't know if it'll work. One of the reasons I do these talks is to help us connect more and more people, tune in more and more deeply to create a greater and greater force against all of that other stuff. And there is a groundswell around the world, sensing something's wrong, looking for answers. But the answers aren't going to be found in how we fix plastic or how we purify our water, though those are critical and important. But that's not where the fundamental answers are going to be found. The fundamental answers are found in the eternal truth, if you will, and how nature herself works, and us joining forces,
Mm.
using our brilliant intellect and creative intellect to join forces with her to forge a new way of being on our earth. Do I
Right.
think it's possible? I do. Do I know if we'll do it? I haven't a clue. But what
And,
do you do?
and what reconnection ecology is posing is that these opportunities for reconnection to life are available to us,
Oh,
even if we're in a bustling city.
they're available to us absolutely everywhere because we live on our earth and it's everywhere.
Right.
In a bustling city, there's a tree, there are clouds, there's a bird, there's a snail.
And there's wisdom there that we can tune to.
Incredible wisdom.
Hmm.
I know it sounds silly, and we're talking about bears and wolves, but I'm working on a book of animal stories, and one of the stories is a relationship I had with a snail that happened to arrive on a plant in a fishbowl that I got because I was desperate, because I was in a little cubicle where there was no life and I couldn't stand it. And that snail had intense joy in life. And I talked to someone, a friend of mine called Penelope Smith, who's an animal communicator. And you don't have to believe in any of this, but I'll share the story for the joy of it. When I talked to her about snails, she said, "Oh my God, snails are incredible. They've got this so sensitive, and they got this electrical sensing field, and they can feel electrically when a big force of energy comes towards them like a cat. Oh, not good, not good." It's so what if that's possibly true
Mm.
in a snail? And I don't like to say just a snail or just a chicken or just in anything, because anything that has a life force in it is a miracle.
Mm.
And to be honored and respected and enjoyed and interacted with at whatever level they can be interacted with, not necessarily an intellectual one. So you interact with a snail on a snail level, and you interact with a coyote at a coyote level, and you go to that part of the brain that matches, and then you can have a connection, and then you have kinship, and then you have rest, and then you have healing, and then you have an understanding, different understanding of how life works, and how might we redo our institutions in line with life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And not at odds with life. So Susan, how can we continue to work with you? How can we hear more stories, share more stories?
If you want to go to the next slide. If you're interested in this approach to life, well, that's a beautiful painting of two of our wolves by one of my favorite wildlife artist, Anne London, who just gets to the soul of animals. But what you can do if you're interested, we have online storytelling circles where each of you is invited to share your stories in a safe space where we support one another with our stories, because most of us have pretty incredible stories, which we often hide because we're afraid. And when you ask, how can we make changes, Sierra? One of the things is to help each other be less afraid and bring these stories out in the world and say, wait a minute, there's a different reality that we've each experienced but are afraid to join forces with to create a new movement. So there's a storytelling, and Moon Conversations are the same. You can join us online. On my website, it's a very large website with lots of videos and stories. You can subscribe to our newsletter and follow us on social, or you can email us. Or you can, if you pull the slide up a little, it's office at earthfireinstitute.org.
Yeah.
So
Let me write that in the chat as well, because I can't quite pull it up, but this is great. And I feel like the rest theme is really integrating for me, and just the invitation to reconnect with life,
yes,
life within ourselves, and then also the
yes,
myriad of life all around us.
both. Very much reconnect with the life in ourselves first, actually. Okay. It's been a pleasure, Sierra. Thank you.
Likewise, Susan, always great to see you. And if anybody is watching this recording, just encouraging you all to reach out and get in touch, continue the conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you, Susan.
Bye.